So we're getting to this recovery phase now of what is this follow-up and what does that look like. But also, and I think you've started that with your flow chart already, clarity around kind of teacher role, administrator role, what are our consequences. So there's hopefully some clarity that's happening and some transparency that's happening. So it's going to take time to build that trust.
Or I'll say it every month. Every time we meet, I say it. So
perfect. Keep reiterating the message.
Yeah, it's just.
So when the student has finally de-escalated and they're in the recovery phase, typically this is when they're ready to get back to work. Sometimes a student might still be a little bit unwilling, still might be a little bit on edge, so ensuring that we're not going to send them back into escalation. Some kiddos, and I'm thinking about little ones that I worked with, it's highly exhausting, some of those peak behaviors.
You want to go take a nap,
and they go to the nurse and sleep. Allowing for that is okay. Again, we want to ensure that we're setting them up for success, so sending them back to an activity that they can be successful in. Working with others might be challenging at this point, so thinking about they just had a really highly escalated situation that peers might have witnessed or engaged with. So if you're going to send them back for like a time to work in groups or to work with a buddy, might not be a great success. But again, it's about knowing your student and knowing what might be appropriate for them. So when we are ready to now debrief, we're now ready to problem solve, we're now ready to hold to those consequences. So it's really important that you do follow through with any request that you made. So if you said to a student, if you destroy this room, you have to clean it up, well, there needs to be a cleanup. That doesn't mean that we're not going to help or that maybe our standards are lowered. They put one piece of paper in the garbage. But we're going to hold them to whatever consequence we said we were going to. Because remember, if it's not something that's enforceable, they're going to learn that real quick. So ensuring that we follow through with any consequences, that we positively reinforce any displays of appropriate behavior. So if the student is following a direction, if the student is engaging in respectful behavior, we're going to highly reinforce and acknowledge. We want it to be successful, so we need to make sure that we're not holding our own now frustration or anger that this just happened. The kid's coming back and starting new. I'm seeing like eye rolls and facial expressions.
Well, I think that's probably our biggest issue.
Because it's adults
still
who
angry at the kid.
They have their own emotions, so I think just having that.
Had a timeout.
Yep. So the teacher hasn't had her own timeout yet. Yeah. Being able to give maybe that moment, so when you walk back to the classroom with the student, is there maybe a 2 minutes that you can walk in the class and they can take a break in the hallway? So those are kind of procedures that you're going to have to think about, and also knowing the teacher, because some of them don't need that, some of them do.
Right. Or some say no.
Yeah. Yep.
Another issue.
I want to give just a little example of something that I watched in a classroom. A student was engaging, they were doing like an art activity. His workspace was a disaster. The teacher gave the direction to clean up his space. He immediately started shutting down, made the space even more messier, started crumpling paper. The teacher again gave the direction. The student eventually started picking up his stuff and started stomping towards the garbage can, kind of pushing chairs, mumbling under his breath. How should we respond?
He's cleaning up.
Yeah. He's cleaning.
Look, you guys are so good. You've heard this morning's message. Unfortunately, I'm going to give the non-example here. The teacher was frustrated by the stomping, the pushing, the mumbling that kept giving him now more corrections and more corrections and more corrections, and the student escalated. So thinking again, you guys all got the right answer, you're all kudos. The original direction was to throw away his materials. He was throwing away the materials. So acknowledging and allowing that to be successful and letting go some of those other behaviors.
And then later, if that were my classroom, later when that student was de-escalated, I would talk to him about, I'm so happy you cleaned up, but I didn't love that you were also stomping. So next time, we do that, they probably kind of have that conversation, but after it's totally over. And
the
do a lot of positive with it.
Yep. Yeah, so you cleaned up. Great job.
Right.
Next time we're going to do it with quiet feet.
Right. That's
something like that. So perfect. The recovery, we want to make sure that we're focusing on this effective transition back, that we are not going to further the negative consequences. So when we're doing this debrief, we're going to be talking about problem solving. So what happened? What can you do differently next time? What were some of those social skills that we might need to explicitly teach? So looking at how do we ensure that the student's going to be set up for success next time. I know you guys have stop and think sheets. So if you're using those, this is my big disclaimer. I think they're a great intervention or a great tool, but we then need to use it next time, because the reality is the student's probably going to escalate again. If they're just filling out the same stop and think sheet and it's never actually, we're going to go back and use those strategies. So if a student wrote on my stop and think sheet, instead of hitting a friend, I'm going to pound the desk. Next time we need to like reinforce that. Remember you said you were going to pound the desk. So it can't just be the exercise of filling out the sheet. It's the use of the stop and think sheet when we're back in this situation. We've talked about here the need for staff to debrief, the need for the student to debrief, and sometimes the need for the peers and the classmates to debrief. So if you've had a highly escalated situation where students were removed from the classroom, this is where sometimes I think we have our own touchy-feeliness of like, how much do we say to them? How do we debrief this with them? So it'll be important for you to think about action planning. How do we set up debriefs with students? What do we say to them? What do we tell them? What do you think are important things for students to know?
Just proud of how they handled it.
Proud of their role.
Your safety is important to us.
Your safety is important. You're safe, because for some kids it might be I'm very anxious to go back into that classroom. Some students exhibit some really unsafe behaviors. I'm sure for your heavy hitters, I'm thinking, you get phone calls from parents in the classroom?
Not as often as you think.
Ah.
Not always,
Okay.
yeah, but not really.
I used to get that a lot, that parents would call and complain. I heard this kid is doing that. I heard this kid is doing that. My kid's not safe. So ensuring their safety is really important. Ensuring that family member that you have a protocol that you've put in place to ensure safety. But also repairing that relationship with peers. Letting them know that Johnny he just had a red zone, that like he really was frustrated, but Johnny's also a good friend. Remember when he helped you out with math? Because you want to repair those peer relationships. You don't want them to think of Johnny as the out of control kiddo who's never safe in my classroom.
That's probably an area of strength that we have here
Oh, good.
with teachers and the kids, because even some of our heaviest hitters have a lot of friends and kids still like them, and kids are a lot more resilient than the adults, and the kids are a lot more forgiving of each other than adults sometimes are of
They
the
put up
student
with a
there.
lot
Yeah.
more.
But they also
Good.
just sort of understand at some level, without words, that that's his thing, or he does that when he's upset. And the same way Missy said, like kids just acknowledge, like, oh, you know this kid more. You've been with him now for 4 years. I'm just meeting him in my first year as a teacher with him.
So we want to highly acknowledge those
Yeah.
student-peer relationships. So the fact that they're able to come back in and be friends with him, we want to acknowledge that
And
for them
acknowledge
and reinforce
their,
that.
Are their feelings, like when they say they're afraid of the student, I understand why you're afraid of the student. Now, don't be afraid, like,
Yes.
you've got to acknowledge the reality of the
Back to
situations and
empathetic
people
listening.
trust. Yeah.
Because it's real for them.
Yeah.
So I understand you're afraid when he's destroying the room.
That's right.
And putting, again, that context, but remember when he helped you down the slide at recess, or remember when he was your peer buddy during reading. So ensuring that, yes, we validate, but then also set up those positive experiences. Amy, you mentioned that part of your problem solving with the student when they have de-escalated is you want to hear their side of the story. I think that's a great way of wording it for many kids, because they feel like you're going to respond based on what my teacher told you.
Yes.
So here's some examples of some problem solving questions. What did you do? Why did you do it? I think all of these questions really depend on the student. So some kiddos understanding the why, like they don't know why, it's just a reaction. But you might get some good answers. I included some of the restorative questions which mirror much of this. So what happened? Who do you think was harmed in the classroom? Or who do you think was affected by that? So they might recognize my teacher, I hit my teacher, or my friends had to leave the classroom. So being able to process some of that with them. And then what can you do differently next time? And again, ensuring that we take that answer and then use it as part of our prevent, teach, respond process. And going back to ensuring that that strategy now becomes something that they're explicitly taught and prompted to do next time the escalation is happening. So we realize now the biggest bang for your buck is in prevention, which is the first 3 phases. Again, if we can keep our prevention techniques, looking at our that prevent quadrant. How are we ensuring the environment is set up for success? How are we prompting the student? How are we teaching them strategies? How are we providing reinforcement when we're seeing those strategies being used? That is where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck, because after those 3 phases have passed, you're really kind of just riding out the storm and ensuring safety. So really investing your time in prevention and investing your interactions in positive interactions with students during this time is really important. Using that positive language, using the language of your expectations. So you already did this when we started, but looking at what would you do differently? So you set us up for success for this section. So thank you all. You recognized early on that the teacher could have intervened very differently with just the I don't have it with me now. Or even acknowledging that he says I finished it. He never got positively reinforced really for the finishing the assignment.
Even going up earlier, like the assignment you didn't finish during class, like just naming the sentence of like you didn't finish
Yeah.
that, remember?
I
Like
thought that too.
The wording.
Sensational.
So I sense snarkiness in that, right?
Yeah.
The assignment you didn't finish. Instead of saying, oh, that math worksheet that you were working on.
yeah.
So adding clarity there, adding positive language. Perfect. So you guys already recognize all of those things. So just to recap, again, we want to intervene early, we want to look at the environment, and we want to look at those replacement behaviors and ensuring that they're being explicitly taught and explicitly reinforced. That it is okay, that if you have with a student the strategy of taking a break, that is an acceptable behavior. We're going to reinforce that taking a break, but we're also going to highly reinforce when they're doing the expected behavior of actually starting the assignment. So you want to be reinforcing both of those pieces and ensuring the student is successful. A quote. Yep.
Do you do our day today as a PD? Because we were talking about this kind of sums
This
up
was
very
everything.
good
That would be really
to
nice
see.
for someone to
Yep.
hear from.
So we mentioned, and as part of your action plan, you talked about the 10 evidence-based classroom strategies as a really important PD piece. I've done some where we've weaved some of that with this function of behavior and with this escalation, because they all, I think you've naturally seen now through the conversation, they all blend and go together. And you have identified this as a explicit kind of staff teach piece. I think it comes down to timing. We do come in and externally do
Yeah,
it.
I just
But I
think
also
that-
want you guys to, because we talked about this last time,
Yeah.
the importance of the messaging coming from this team too. So how can we reinforce tidbits during staff meetings? How can we provide some strategies? Maybe it's like, hey, Missy has a great,
But you know what, man, I'm
Need to
not being a
reinforce
jerk,
you.
I'm just saying, like, if it comes from me or Amy or
I think we're making
Carolyn,
it up.
they think
Yep.
it's like, well, it works for you, it doesn't work for me, or whatever.
Yep.
We have no, you know,
But people say that about outside presenters too. You're right,
Yep.
but
but I'm
those-
just looking at this
it's
as
those
like, you know
people who
what,
aren't
this
willing to do
gives,
it.
this is very, I thought helpful because in a non-threatening way, it's making teachers look at how you're part of the problem. And I don't mean to say problem, but
no.
you could.
You could be handling it way differently.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, that word is non-threatening because if
Feeling
we
like your
say
boss
it
is saying
different,
it.
yeah, if
Yeah.
Amy says it, you're gonna be
Yep,
like, oh,
it's
what
true.
does she know? She doesn't.
So I think you're putting, so you know the context of your staff, you know the staff needs in your building. So it could be having an outside